Good morning. This is Debbie with ancestryandtravels.com. I'm here to do another tutorial. This is going to be a tutorial on how to use census records. Census records is one of our best sources starting in 1790 because it helps us trace our ancestors, where they were, what children they had. Starting in the 1850 census, they started adding children. Before that, it was just the head of household and how many males at certain ages and how many females at certain ages. So it was more of a guess sometimes with those censuses, but it still gives you a good guideline, and you can really actually follow your family with the census records, even starting in 1790. Normally, when you come into Family Search, you're going to come to this page and you're going to hit Search, and it's going to take you to the records, Search Historical Records. Normally, when you do search, a lot of people go ahead and fill in the first and last name, birthplace, and birth years. A rule of thumb always is 10 years before and 10 years after, because you just never know. The records that you find are only as good as the record taker. And a lot of times they didn't talk to the person directly. They talked to a child or a neighbor, and so they just didn't necessarily get the exact information. Another thing to really watch for, if you know you have somebody and you really want to find them, but you're not finding them by putting their name in here, a lot of times if you'll leave the first name off or just use the first initial and a star, then it'll fill in and give you people with names that start with A or whatever letter you're starting with. And because like with my great-grandfather, Alexander McKee, I couldn't find him in a census, and so I went in and actually went through every page of that township to try to see if I could find him in the census, and they had him down as something totally different than Alexander. So it's always good to kind of look through things, and if you're pretty sure they're there and you're not finding them through this search, it's always good to do a deeper search. The way to do that, if you're going to go ahead and do a census report, is you're going to scroll down, you're going to scroll down on this page, and you'll come to an interactive map. And with this map, you can choose where in the world you want to search for records. Today we're going to go ahead and do the United States of America, North America. So as you see, it turns gold once you put your finger on that or your clicker on that United States. It brings up this drop down box. You're going to choose United States of America. Now the reason we're doing this is because this way you can go in and see all of the censuses in one place. So this is what you do, is you go into the United States of America, then you scroll down a little bit and you'll see show all 961 records. And you're going to see that, you go see where the search is, and you go down below the Alabama county marriages, show all 961. So you'll do that, it'll bring everything up in alphabetical order. You're going to scroll, and it goes forever. So I use the scroll bar and just kind of pull it down until I get to the U's for United States. And you'll find the United States Census records. And it has all the years that they have censuses. Right now they have them up to 1940. This year, I believe, or next year, they're going to be releasing the 1950 censuses. So basically, you're going to go in here, and today we're going to work with the 1790 census first. And with the 1790 census, you can put in the first name, last name, and then you can put in the residence. If you know, you're pretty sure where they're from. Like I know, for instance, that my grandfather was in Knox County, Ohio. Not in 1790. Let's do this he was in Pennsylvania in 1790. I could put Charles McKee and then put Pennsylvania in that search. And what you'll find is that there was a Charles McKee in 1790 in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Now, I know this isn't my grandfather because he had two sons in this census um, that were under the age of 16. And in my research, I know that he only had one son by 1790. He had a son named Robert, but he didn't have a son. My grandpa Alexander was actually born in 1792, so he wouldn't have been born yet. And then there was also two daughters. So I don't believe that this is my great grandfather Charles McKee in Lancaster. I also know that I found him in the 1800 census in Washington County, Pennsylvania, and that the children match up in that census. So this isn't him in this census here. So then you're going to go ahead and click on that census. This brings up the Charles McKee. Like I say, this first line, it's the heads of household. Anybody over the age of 16 is in that category. You'll see the second one down is Charles McKee. There's one person over the age of 16. Then it's the white males that are under the age of 16, and it shows that there's two. And like I say, he would have only had one child, one son, in 1790. In fact, he would have only had one child in 1790. The third category is white females. Doesn't really give an age range or anything there. It just says that he had 3 females in that year. Another thing to notice is that it says other free persons, and then also slaves. So if you're looking for slave owners, and you're seeking to find your ancestors that might have been slaves back in the 1790s, they would have categories in here, and I believe I captured it right here. Yeah, John Halderman had one slave in 1790 in Lancaster, Donegal, Pennsylvania. And so it was Donegal Township, Lancaster County in Pennsylvania. So you can find, that's the information that you can find right now. They also have actual censuses for the slaves, especially in the southern states where they had quite a few slaves. They'll have complete censuses on slave owners and the names of the slaves or the number of the slaves. Once you hit the 1850 census, like I show, that in the 1790, there's not a lot of information in there, though it does give you an age range as far as that there's children under 16 or above 16, but it doesn't really give you a lot of information that you're going to really want. So you need to follow each census throughout the years because it'll give you more information and help you narrow down whether this is your ancestor or not. Next, we're going to go in and we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to hit search. We're going to go ahead and go into the United States of America, scroll down to the United States censuses and click on the 1850 census. The 1850 census is the first census that they put the children's names, the wives' names, and everyone's ages, and also where they were born, which is really good information. It gets back, I think it's in the 1860 or the 1870 census is when they start, and I think it's the 60. They start telling where they were born, where their father was born, and where their mother was born. So that also helps too. That's how I learned that my grandpa Charles McKee was born in Ireland and not in the United States. So that told me that he was my first McKee that came over to America from Ireland. And I found that by going through his son Alexander, because by then, by the 1850 census, in fact, Charles had passed away in 1847, so he wouldn't have been in the 1850 census. So I learned more information from his children because he wasn't alive to give me that information in the census records. I went ahead and went into the 1850 census and put in my fourth great grandfather, son of Charles, Alexander McKee in Knox County, Ohio. Now, you see that when you search for this record, you see the little paper in the view thing. It'll say paper, has the paper, and then it also has the camera. And as I've told people in other tutorials, that camera means there's an actual picture of the document that you can look at. And you can see that picture right here in this little thumbnail. But this right here kind of shows you what you can find in the paper one. But it just really doesn't give you a whole lot of information on him here. For example, it doesn't include, well, I think it does include that he was born in Pennsylvania. I can talk, really I can. So what you're going to do is you've got this record. I know that this is my grandfather, and the reason I know it is because he was born in 1792 in Pennsylvania. In the events, it's got his name, the events, the relationships, and so forth. He's in Brown, Knox County, Ohio at this time in 1850. He has a wife, Tabitha, and then Charles Hutchison. And I know from research too that Charles is a grandson. Now we'll go ahead and look at this record. This is what it looks like when you click on the record, that camera that you want to look at the record. It shows you it was on page 36 of Brown Township, Knox County, Ohio. This is what you're in the 1850 census. This is what you're going to document on this document when you download it. You can click on download. You'll save it. It'll go into your downloads and your computer files. You go into the downloads and you're going to name it Alexander McKee, Brown Township, Knox County, Ohio, 1850, United States, U.S. Federal Census. That way you know what the document is. Anytime you need to find it, you've got it documented. Always document your documents. Because I learned the hard way, because I used to just pull stuff in, because oh, this is good, oh, that's good, oh, this good. And then I didn't necessarily go right back in and document where I found it. And so it was frustrating when I was trying to tell someone else how to find it in the beginning because I didn't document well. So it's really, if you'll start that habit when you very first start, it takes you a couple seconds, but it saves you a lot of time in the long run. Now, if you can make that photo bigger so you can look at more information on it. As you can see here, I've captured my grandpa, Alexander McKee. Says that he's 58 years old. He's a male. He's a farmer. He says that the value of his property is $3,500. And then it says that he was born in Pennsylvania. It has his wife, Tabitha. Says she's 50 years old, a female. Doesn't say anything about an occupation because obviously she's taking care of the home. But then underneath Pennsylvania it says D.O. D.O. just means ditto. Or it's probably a D.I. but it looks like a O. But anyway, that means she was also born in Pennsylvania. Then Charles Hutchinson, he's 14 years old. He's a male. And he was born in Ohio. Now, the next thing that is interesting about this record is if you see the next family down is James Biggs. He's 27. He's a laborer, and he was born in Ohio. Now, he's a laborer. It could mean that he's working in Alexander's farm, because I know for a fact that Evelyn, the wife, is 23, and she's a female. I happen to know that she is the daughter of my grandpa Alexander. The fact that they're living close by and that he's a laborer tells me that he most likely was working for my grandfather on his farm. And then they have a daughter, Angeline, that's 2 years old, and she was also born in Ohio. Another interesting thing about this, you might notice that there's another McKee on here. I happen to know that Silas McKee is the son of my grandpa Alexander McKee. and he's 25 years old. He's a male, shows that he's a laborer, so he's also working for his father on the farm, and he was born in Ohio. His daughter, or his wife, is Susanna, and I happen to know it's Majors. She's 24 years old, and she was also born in Ohio. And then they have two sons, Harrison and Basil McKee. Harrison 4 and Basil is 2, and they were both born in Ohio. So there's some good family, you're getting some family structure out of this 1850 census. Now, a lot of this information that I found is, and I know why I know this is so significant, is because of other research that I've done on other censuses and things that I've learned about my grandpa Alexander that tells me that these are his children that are living nearby. Now, another thing that you can do when you're inside a census record, I was in Knox County, Ohio. I can go in and I can go ahead and click on the Knox. And the Knox County, Ohio, it'll tell you townships that are within Knox County, Ohio in 1850. If I want, I can go into these different not counties, but townships, and find other people to see if there's similar names, because they're all living within probably a 20-mile radius. So you can go in and look at all the different areas. I know that I have some McKees in Harrison County. I have some in Union County. My great-grandfather, Charles McKee, was in Union County. That's where he had property, and his youngest son, Charles McKee Jr., took over the farm there. So you can look in all these different, there's also Jefferson County. Alexander's son, Robert McKee, who is my great-grandfather down through Alexander, he was living in Jefferson County, Jefferson Township. So there's ways to go through all these different townships to see what you can find. And it's good to get familiar with the names of the people in that county, because a lot of times they intermarry with these people, and they also migrate together. So there's some good information that you can find in those. But anytime you're trying to map people, trying to figure out family relationships and such, it's really good to go in and do this Knox County and look at what's going on within that county. When I was doing some mapping, I went through and I would go through certain counties. I'd go through all the townships to find all the people, all the McKees. Of course, this is back in the 1790s, so there wasn't as many townships, there wasn't as many people. But it's a good way to get familiar with the people that are running around with your family, because they did have a habit of intermarrying with certain families and migrating with certain families. You'll start noticing patterns when you're going through the census records. So it's a really good way to learn more about your family history. I hope I've taught you something about how to get in and do some census research. Don't be afraid of going in and just playing in Family Search or any of the search engines to find records on your family, because you'll be pleasantly surprised as you start learning how to travel through the different sites and figure out how their systems work. Anyway, have a good day, and thank you for watching.